All right, so today we're diving deep into responsive motion graphics in After Effects.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
We've got a ton of notes and audio from lessons,
Yeah.
all about how to make motion graphics that, really adapt to the content.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Moving beyond those static templates.
Exactly, exactly. Building systems that, save you time and make everything look super polished and consistent.
Consistent, that's key.
Yeah, yeah. So first things first, the audio really stressed the difference between responsive and reactive.
Ah, yes, classic distinction.
They actually brought up this YouTube video, Words Always.
I think I've seen that one.
Basically, in-motion graphics, responsive means the layout permanently changes based on the content. It's not just like a temporary animation or effect.
It's like the layout itself is, well, responding to what's inside it, not just reacting with a quick little blip.
Right, it's a fundamental shift. So if you change the text, the style, even the font size, everything else adapts. The containers, the backgrounds, other text blocks, all of it. So it always looks like it was custom made for that specific content.
Exactly.
And speaking of how it looks, the notes had this whole section on the core characteristics of these responsive systems.
Yeah, the building blocks of it all.
Like the permanent layout adjustment we talked about, but also automated changes, consistent design, that custom-built feel, and then this whole systems thinking approach.
It's about thinking holistically.
Yeah, modularity, reusability, and how this all leads to those more advanced workflows, always with the layout front and center.
The layout is king.
Absolutely. Moving on, another big idea from the notes was the single source of truth.
Ah, yes, a fundamental principle.
It sounded like a concept borrowed from web development or something.
It is, and it's incredibly important in motion graphics, too.
So for After Effects, what does it actually mean?
Basically, for any piece of design information, like brand colors, font styles, you name it, there should be one and only one place where it's defined.
So instead of setting your brand's primary color on 50 different layers, you have one central control layer for that color.
Exactly.
And that way, if the client suddenly wants to change the color, you only have to change it in one place.
Boom, everything updates automatically.
No more hunting down every instance of that color across the entire project.
It's all about efficiency and consistency.
And avoiding those pesky inconsistencies, right?
Absolutely.
The notes really emphasize how crucial this is for responsive systems that are, both efficient to build and easy to maintain.
It's not just about convenience. It's about building systems that are robust and adaptable.
Okay, let's get into some of those core characteristics we mentioned earlier.
All right, let's unpack them.
Starting with automated changes and design consistency. It seems like expressions are really the magic behind all of this.
Oh, for sure. Expressions are the engine of automation in these systems.
So they allow you to link different layer properties together. If the length of a text layer changes, an expression can automatically adjust, say, the width of its background.
Right, keeping everything visually balanced.
And it's not just about things changing, it's about them changing while still maintaining the overall design.
Exactly. Like, if you have a lower third with specific padding around the text, a well-written expression will ensure that padding stays consistent no matter how long the name is.
Which, as the audio pointed out, saves a ton of time in the long run.
Especially when you're working with tons of different content.
Okay, another big one, reusability and efficiency. I mean, this has got to be a huge benefit for anyone working on multiple projects.
Oh, it's a game changer. Responsive systems are built for reuse.
So you create a flexible title card, and then you can use it for a bunch of different projects, different clients, different titles.
No need to start from scratch every single time.
The audio even talked about this idea of a mother of all templates.
A highly adaptable design that you can just tweak for all sorts of content.
So no more painstakingly creating a new title sequence for every single video.
That's the dream.
And all of this leads to foundation for advanced workflows, which I gotta say sounds pretty intriguing.
It gets really powerful. Once you understand the basics of responsive design, you can start to explore these more advanced techniques.
Like what?
Well, like adaptive design, where you might have different versions of a graphic optimized for different screen sizes.
So it looks great on a phone, a tablet, computer screen.
All from the same responsive principles. And then there's automated workflows where your motion graphics are connected to spreadsheets or JSON files.
Hold on, so you're saying the graphics can basically update themselves from a spreadsheet?
Pretty much. You change the data in the spreadsheet, the graphics change automatically.
That's wild.
It opens up so many possibilities for creating dynamic, data-driven visuals.
The notes also talked about system thinking and holistic view, which suggests a whole different way of approaching motion graphics design.
It's a mindset shift for sure. Instead of designing for one specific piece of content, you're designing for a range of possibilities.
So instead of a call-out with exactly one line of text, you think about what happens if the text is longer or shorter or has multiple lines.
You're designing a system that can handle all of those variations gracefully.
Like a piece of clothing that can fit different sizes.
Exactly. You're not just making one size, you're making a design that can adapt.
Okay, so let's get practical.
All right, real-world examples.
The audio mentioned that mother of all templates again, and how it could be used for, like, social media videos.
Right, imagine a marketing team that creates tons of those short videos.
And they need different end screens for each one.
Instead of making unique end screens from scratch, they could have this responsive template.
And they just drop in the call to action, like a website or a social media handle.
And the template handles the rest.
Adjusts the layout, the text fields, everything.
And keeps all the branding consistent no matter how long the text is.
Super efficient.
Plus, they were talking about how AI is changing content creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, these responsive templates could be a game changer for integrating that AI-generated content.
So you could have an AI write the call to action, and the template would just adapt to it perfectly.
Exactly.
Okay, so the notes also talked about patterns of use and content audits.
Important steps before you even start building a responsive system.
So you analyze your existing content, see what types of titles you use, how long your lower thirds tend to be, what kind of icons you're working with.
You're looking for those recurring elements, those patterns.
And that helps you figure out what needs to be part of your responsive framework.
Right.
And typography seemed like a big one. The notes mentioned this idea of a font styles composition.
Oh, yeah. Typography is key, especially for branding.
So this font styles comp would be like a central control panel for all the typography in your project.
You define your different text styles there, like headline large, body text, each with its specific font, size, weight, color.
And then in your other compositions, you link your text layers to these master styles.
So if you need to update a font, you just change it in the font styles comp and it updates everywhere.
So much easier than going through and changing it on every single text layer manually.
Way easier.
Okay, let's talk about some of those more advanced techniques.
All right, let's get fancy.
They also emphasize the importance of using a timer in expressions, especially when you're referencing properties that are animating.
Oh yeah, timers are crucial.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. If your expression is relying on the value of another property, and that property is animating, you don't want the expression to grab a value while the animation is still happening.
Because it'll be like a mid-animation value, not the final value.
Exactly. So a timer basically tells After Effects to wait until the animation is finished before evaluating the expression.
Ah, so it prevents those weird glitches where the calculation is based on, like, an in-between value.
Precisely.
Good to know. The notes also mentioned reproducible code and naming conventions for layers.
Yeah, super important for maintainability.
Especially when you're building these complex responsive systems.
Especially then.
So reproducible code, that means writing expressions in a way that's easy to understand and reuse.
And if you need to go back and modify them later, you're not completely lost.
And naming conventions, that just means giving your layers logical names.
So you can actually tell what's going on in your project.
Then they mentioned this type mask technique, using a shape layer to control text visibility.
Ah, yes, a classic trick.
How does that one work?
So you create a mask that closely follows the shape of your text.
Okay.
And then you use a shape layer as a track mat for the text layer.
So the text is only visible within the boundaries of that shape layer.
Exactly. It's like using a stencil.
And you can use this for all sorts of cool reveals and transitions.
You can make text appear as if it's being written on or scrolling within a specific area.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, this part of the audio was really interesting. They talked about creating custom text tools within After Effects
Oh, yeah. That's next level.
with pre-built animations and controls for editors.
It's all about making complex animations accessible to everyone, not just the After Effects wizards.
So you could build in like specific easing curves and timings for different animation styles.
And then expose those as simple controls, like sliders or drop-down menus.
So an editor could say, animate text by words or by lines, just by adjusting a slider.
And they wouldn't even have to touch the keyframes or write any expressions.
Wow, that's powerful.
It's a great way to streamline workflows and ensure consistency across a team.
Okay, last but not least, they clarify the difference between dynamic content and responsive features.
Ah, yes. Always good to emphasize that distinction.
So dynamic content, That's the actual information that changes, like the text in a title or the images in a slideshow.
In responsive features, those are the mechanisms that make the layout adapt to those changes.
So the content is what changes, and the features are how the design responds to those changes.
Right, like the name in a lower third might change, but the responsive features make sure the background box always fits perfectly.
Got it. Okay, moving on to optimization and troubleshooting.
Keeping things running smoothly.
The audio had some quick tips for making expressions run faster.
Efficiency is key, especially when you've got a lot of expressions going on.
So one thing was to check basic properties like source text and scale early on in your expression code.
Right, because if the outcome depends on those properties and those properties haven't changed, then you don't need to do all those other calculations.
It's like skipping a step if you don't need it.
Exactly. Another good tip was to put the most likely scenarios at the beginning of your if-else statements.
So the expression doesn't have to go through a bunch of conditions. It's probably not going to meet anyway.
Makes sense. Yes.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about collaboration and client management.
Working with other humans.
The audio stressed the importance of communication, especially when you're working with responsive templates.
You got to set those expectations up front.
Like how much text can the template handle?
What kind of layout adjustments might happen automatically?
It's all about being transparent with the client.
Right. And maybe even showing them the project files so they can see how everything works.
Or giving them some interactive lessons.
Exactly.
And then there's the whole issue of governance and maintenance, especially for templates that are going to be used on the web.
Ah, yes, the long-term stuff.
Like security considerations.
And protecting your intellectual property, maybe by encrypting your expressions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about building the template, it's about the whole life cycle of that template.
From creation to deployment to updates and everything in between.
All right, so to sum it all up, responsive motion graphics are a super powerful way to create adaptable, reusable designs.
And they can save you a ton of time and ensure that your work is consistent and on brand.
But it's not just about the technical skills. It's also about this whole mindset shift towards system thinking and anticipating different content scenarios.
You got to be thinking a few steps ahead.
Absolutely. So, for you, our amazing listener, I want to leave you with this thought.
Oh, a parting challenge.
How do you think the rise of AI design tools will further transform responsive motion graphics?
It's an exciting time to be in this field, that's for sure.
What new possibilities might emerge as AI becomes even more integrated into our creative workflows?
We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And any other questions or experiences you have with responsive design and expressions.
Hit us up with your ideas, because they might just spark our next deep dive.
We're always looking for inspiration.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.